Welcome back to this channel. It is your resident internet psychic medium and spiritual advisor, Mystic Rain. And then today's video is actually going to be a continuation of my rambling from the previous video about when I was talking to you all about discernment. But I didn't want to go into it there because then the video would have been too long. So we're just going to do it here. So what's recently come up to me is the fact that we live, and when I say come up, I mean like to the point where I was able to really sort of sit and like examine this more fully. I think I always knew it, and I think a lot of people know it, but I feel like I was able to really kind of sit down and think about it, is the fact that we actually live inside an incredibly abusive society. And all of the systems within the society are incredibly abusive. And by extension, we have ended up in abusive family relationships, abusive romantic relationships, abusive friendships, abusive experiences when you're at work and you're dealing with a supervisor. This is an incredibly abusive society. And we wonder why so many people can't take it. So many people go crazy. They're just like, fuck this shit. I can't handle it anymore. We think about things like mental health issues, or how maybe you're processing things or not processing them, or maybe you are processing them, but you're not processing them that well. And then we go into this place where we're blaming ourselves, right? Where we're asking ourselves, all right, get it together, right? Maybe you are someone that deals with like depression or anxiety, and you tell yourself sometimes like, get it together. Like, why can't I snap out of it? Like, why is this so hard for me? Why do I go through periods where I just want to be alone and I don't want to deal with anybody? Why am I like isolating? And then we come up with all these other words for it. We call ourselves mentally ill. We say, I'm an introvert, right? And what I was thinking was, do I think there may be truth to some of that? Yeah. But do I think it's all because it's our fault? I started to realize I don't think I do. I think it's all a product of the abusive society that we live in. You know, when you are someone that has depression, for example, because I struggle with it, you know what I mean? Sometimes within that journey, you don't want to deal with the world, right? You just want to be by yourself. You want to be closed in. You want to be isolated because dealing with the world is too hard. But then I started to think, if the world was nice, if the world was kind, if the world was a soft place to land, would I still feel like it was too hard? Would I still have this desire to isolate? Would I still deal with like these moments of feeling like everything is doom and gloom if I actually had a soft place to land? And what I realized was I may not feel that way. I actually may feel better. I don't know, right? Because that world doesn't exist for us. But I also recognize that it's a possibility that maybe I wouldn't feel how I feel sometimes. And if you think about how we treat each other, it's terrible. How we treat ourselves, it's terrible. We have in society normalized abuse. We abuse each other openly and publicly, and no one does anything about it. It's all acceptable. If you think about ghosting. Ghosting is the easiest thing I can think to as an example, right? You think about anything, you're seeking a romantic partner, you're seeking love, right? Because if we're going to be real, the majority of the thing that everyone is searching for, everybody, is love. To be loved, to feel accepted, to be honored. We're all searching for that. Everybody wants that, right? Everyone wants to be loved, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so when you go into that place because you're like, okay, I'm going to find it. This is going to be the time I'm going to find it. And then you end up talking to somebody because you already walked in vulnerable because you were seeking love. And then maybe you connect with somebody and then they ghost you. That's abusive. That this person may know that you walked into it seeking love. You may have said to this person, I'm looking for a relationship. And then they ghost you. That's abusive. Like, why do we do that, right? The fact that you can turn on the news and there's another mass shooting, at least in the United States, that's like the highest form of abuse, just taking life. For what reason? You're just taking life out of people. Like, is that not abuse? And then we have a government who doesn't care. We have a government that has no desire to stop it. We have a government that cares more about the money that's coming from the NRA than they do about the lives of children that are being lost every day in these schools. That is abusive. You go to work every day. It doesn't matter where it is that you work. It doesn't matter what your ranking is, right? Because sometimes what happens is that maybe, let's say you work and you have a normal job. You do what normal people do. You are an essential worker. You do a job that is necessary for that business to run, and people dog you out. They're not kind to you. They're not nice to you. Think about somebody that works at like Starbucks and they get yelled at because they accidentally put whipped cream on a drink that somebody didn't want whipped cream on, and something that they could so easily fix by making another one. The person doesn't give them the opportunity to fix it. They're just cussing them out and lying. And this happens. Or you think about someone who maybe does have a job where they're higher ranked, where maybe they have a director title or a VP title or something like that. They get abused too. I meet them all the time. I recently met someone who is a VP in their role, who bursted out crying because she's getting bullied at work. She coincidentally happens to be the VP of Human Resources, meaning she reports to the COO. She is the highest in line when it comes to human resources, and she's getting bullied at work, and she can't do anything about it. No one cares. She has no advocate. How are you the one that oversees human resources and you still get bullied at work and you're a VP? It doesn't matter where you are at in society. People are still being abused every day. You go to work, you're getting yelled at by your boss over something that you didn't even do, right? People are getting fired every day over things that they didn't actually do, right? Like the whole thing just in general is like, it's just abuse. People are threatening your livelihood. People are getting screamed at in parking lots. People are getting chased down on roadways because maybe they accidentally cut somebody off because they didn't see the car behind them because the car was right in their blind spot. And then it triggered the road rage of somebody else, and now they're riding your ass, threatening you. And you know what we call them? Oh, that's a Karen. We have a word for it. Oh, that's a Karen. Where we can just do one of these motions like, oh, whatever. That's a Karen. And we're not holding any of this accountable. We're not holding these systems accountable. We're not holding these people accountable. But what we are doing, for some reason, is holding ourselves accountable. And then that is creating the situation where we're putting ourselves deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into these holes of isolation, because it's safer there than to actually go outside and deal with the actual real world. But then the problem with that is that we are animals. We are primates. We thrive in communities. So many animals move in herds. People are like that. We thrive in community. We thrive in herds. And somehow along the way, we have lost that. And now everything is individual. Everything is separate. So now, not only are we dealing with the abuse that's of society, we are dealing with the abuse that's of society by ourselves. And even the people that are inside of a community, maybe the people that have a family network or maybe live at home with family, the people in the house are abusing you too. So now you are in a place where you're like, I'm not coming out of my room. I'm going to stay here because it's not safe in this house. It's not safe out of this house. I need to support myself, so I got to go to work, but it's not safe there either. And so everybody is on guard all of the time. Everybody is ready to fight or defend themselves all of the time. And because of that, we are perpetuating this cycle day after day after day, because we're in an abusive society. And because of that, we have to be prepared to respond to the abuse at any given moment, at any given time. That puts us on edge, that makes us irritable. We are more susceptible to being angry because, in my opinion, angry is the most powerful emotion that actually exists outside of love, because anger is an energy that moves things, right? Well, it destroys things, but that's what, in my opinion, what makes it so powerful. But we have to be prepared to be able to access that part of ourselves at any point in time, because how else are we going to protect ourselves? Our ego is sitting at the forefront all of the time because we need to be protected all of the time, because we live in a society that's so heavily abusive that we can't necessarily fall into our divine self. We can't necessarily fall into our loving self, our whole self, our healed self, our integrated self, because if we do that, we may become vulnerable at a time where we need to be hyper vigilant. And so with that realization, that has made me go, what can I do about it for myself? I can't fix the world. But what I can do now that I have an awareness of it is figure out how that plays out in my life and make decisions about what I want to do about it in order to be able to live a better quality of life. So, what are those areas where I'm experiencing abuse? Who are those people that may be perpetuating that? What are those situations that may be contributing to that? And then make a decision about whether or not I want to engage with that person, participate in that situation, or if I want to tweak it, right? Because I don't necessarily think that the answer to everything is getting rid of it. I think it's the easiest answer. I think it's the most efficient answer. I think throwing it in the garbage is less of a headache than like trying to figure out how to fix it. So I don't have an issue with it. But what if it's actually something that you actually originally wanted? Or what if it's actually a situation that you actually cared about, but maybe the people that are involved in the situation are maybe the ones that are maybe a little bit more abusive, but you wanted the situation to begin with? Is it possible to tweak it? And by tweaking it, is it possible to tweak maybe your involvement in the situation or your participation? Is it possible to be like, maybe I had a more active role here, but I'm going to maybe take a more passive role. So you're still involved because you wanted to be in the first place, but you're not necessarily so active where the abuse is hitting you so hard because you're like on the front line. If it's a particular person, and let's say like the abuse, because I think everyone can be abusive. I think the moment someone says mean to you, I think it's abusive. The moment someone rolls their eyes at you, I think it can be abusive. I think the moment someone dismisses you, I think that can be abusive. And what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that like, I think there are things that can be abusive, and I think there's like an abusive relationship where you're getting smacked around. If you're in a situation like that, none of what I'm saying applies to this, okay? Like that's the situation that you need to handle and you need to get out of. But I'm talking about like if you're just dealing with regular everyday people and they do those things and you don't like it, right? And I would say things like that are things that like feel like they're brushing up against you a little bit. Like if you're like, ooh, I didn't really appreciate that, right? Is it possible that you can reframe how you interact with that person, right? And that could be maybe interacting with that person less, because I do think that throwing it in the garbage is the most efficient way to deal with the problem. But can that also be you standing in your power and having a really honest conversation with that person saying, hey, these things happen and I don't really appreciate it and I would prefer that it doesn't happen again? Because most likely that person doesn't even notice that they're doing it, right? Could that be the case in order to stop yourself from experiencing that with the person? Could it be finding a different time of day to go certain places? Because, you know, you experience abuse out in the public. There are places that people don't go to anymore because of how bad it is. Like, for example, think of like malls, right? Malls, I know, give people a lot of anxiety these days because of everything that can happen in a mall and shootouts and stuff like that. But instead of stopping your life, is it possible that you can just go on Google and like research the time at the mall where the least amount of people visit it, and then maybe choose to go during that window? That way, if you were someone that like previously loved shopping and previously loved the mall experience, that instead of never being able to experience again, you just tweak it a little bit so you can still experience it in a way that makes you feel more safe. And so what I realized is that because this is the society that we live in, and I don't think it's getting any better, and you can sit here and be like, Mr. Crane, do a prediction. It's not getting any better. This is what it is, and I think it's going to get worse. I don't think in this particular lifetime we're going to see harmony, right? I think that things are going to have to literally blow up and destroy itself. We're going to have a real tower moment before there is ever any harmony. And I also think just in society in general, there's always discourse, just in general. There's never been a time that we've been taught of in any book where things are peaceful. There's always discourse in society. But knowing that and recognizing that, yeah, okay, this is like an abusive society, then you have the ability to figure out, well, what would make me feel safe? Who would make me feel safe? What situations will make me feel safe? You have the ability to redesign your life in order to fit those things so you can still appreciate and experience the things that you like and things that matter to you instead of just throwing it away. Because you can throw it away, but that leaves you with nothing. That leaves you isolated. That leaves you stuck at home in your room doing nothing when you want to be doing something, right? Because you are scared, or maybe you feel like it's just easier to stay out of the way because life is lifing too hard right now. And going out that door, there's too many things that can go wrong or too many things that can happen. And so you do nothing. But being in that state is you allowing yourself to fall into a powerless state. You have incarnated during this time. So your soul knows at some level that this time is volatile. Your soul thought, oh, I can do it. I can handle it, no problem. Your soul knows that you as a being are strong enough to deal with all of these things, to deal with these obstacles, to deal with these people, to deal with these situations. The soul knows. The soul knows that it was incarnating into somewhat an abusive environment. Earth, from my understanding, when you're talking to the galactics, and I said the galactics, I mean the aliens. I hate calling them that. I feel like calling them aliens is just so rude because they are beings and you can communicate with them. It's like communicating with spirit, but like whatever. And but my understanding from what they tell me about the planet Earth in general is that Earth is actually like, it's volatile compared to a lot of other planets and a lot of other societies. It's not the only one, right? So it's not like Earth is like crazy and then everything else is peaceful. But Earth is particularly volatile, at least in this particular area of our solar system or the universe or like galaxy or like whatever. It is particularly volatile. And because of that, it is a very, it's not summer school. It's more so of like, for the gifted. I would say I would put it like that. It's like souls that want to learn things, but learn it faster. So you learn things faster on Earth than you would learn on a different planet, for example, in a different galaxy, because it's so volatile. It forces you to kind of get there and get there faster. So I say all that to say that like your soul knows deep down that it was capable of doing it and it made the decision to do it. And so if you are somebody that is finding yourself to be a recluse, because people are falling into that pattern more and more often because of the volatility of everything that's going on, then what I would say is that you are not living up to your soul's purpose. You're not living up to the strength and the courage and the fortitude that your soul actually possesses, because your soul wouldn't have made the decision to be here. And so like with that awareness, what you now have to do is figure out what works best for you. Because being a recluse and shunning yourself out and away from society does not work best for you. It makes you sad. It makes you depressed. It makes you lonely. It makes you feel like you're missing out on things. Sometimes you have moments where you're like, well, what is life? Because this is not living, right? Because you're right. You're not living, right? You're just existing. And so, but if you know these things, then you have the ability to say, okay, I'm going to do something about it. And then you have the ability to choose what you want to do about it. And so my suggestion through this realization is just to tweak it. I don't think that you have to do something very extreme. Just tweak it. If you are someone that loves to go eat out, but you have anxiety going because you don't like the amount of people that are there, you feel like it's too crowded, go on Google, pull up the time and pull down that little drop down box that tells you the days of the week, and it shows you in a graph what days are the busy periods and what days are the light periods. Figure out what the light periods are. And then that way you go during those light periods where there's less people, but you still get to enjoy the things that you actually want to enjoy. And then that is you living. If there are activities that you have stopped doing because of the anxiety or the fear that's coming with that, because you don't feel safe, because society is abusive, tweak how you interact with it. Tweak when you interact with it. Tweak who you're interacting with it with. If you are someone that likes concerts, but you don't like going to these massive venues because they are loud, they are large crowds, and recently things don't go well when you're in a large crowd, maybe tweak that activity and start going to shows that are in smaller venues with less people, right? If you are dealing with people, maybe you have a job and maybe you love the job, and maybe one of your coworkers is an asshole. Maybe you choose to take more of a passive approach with dealing with that person, where you can be at your job because you love it, but you're not putting yourself in the front line to be exposed to like the abusive behavioral patterns of this different person, right? So I would challenge you to re-examine all the times in your life where you've pulled back, because it wasn't safe, because I'm sure there's a lot, right? And if those are situations that you actually genuinely enjoy, but you've put it down due to safety and you wanting to protect yourself, which is reasonable, and I understand that, like, sit down for a little bit and figure out how can you engage with that in a way that works for you. Because that's the phase of life that I'm in right now. I'm figuring out, how do I life in a way that works for me? I don't want to life in a way that works for people anymore, because doing it for other people is not working for me. And if I keep lifing in a way that works for other people, I'm going to continue being upset. And I don't want to be upset. I'm going to continue missing out on experiences that are important to me. And I don't want to continue missing out on experiences that are important to me. So now, in order to experience those things, how do I make it work in a way that works for me? Because society is not changing. It's not getting better. There's not going to be a time when things have improved. And so if we know that, us being a recluse doesn't change anything, and we're going to continue existing instead of living when we already are in the society that's not going to change. So if we know that, then we can be proactive about it and figure out, what do we need to change in order to be able to interact with that society again? Because although it's abusive, there are pieces of things that happen in life that are very beautiful. And if we fall into this pattern of withdrawing, then we miss out on those really beautiful moments and those experiences. And the only one that suffers in that case is us. And so many of us are experiencing these moments of suffering because we're trying to stay safe, or we're trying to avoid unpleasant situations. And by doing that, we are missing out on the beauty that is life. So now, figure out what you need to tweak in order to get life to work for you again. So I'm going to end this video here. Think about that. And if you like what you see, please subscribe to this channel, share, and I will see you all soon.